Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you an impromptu book review of a book I was not expecting to find, but I was out hunting and I found it early, because this is the newest, at least at the time of me making this review, this is the newest House of Shivers book in the series. And we're going to be looking at book number 5, The Last Sleepover. Now, at the time of me making this video, this book, at least in terms of its official release date, or I guess shelf date, hasn't happened yet. So I got this book early, and I've been getting these books early consistently since Judy and the Beast, I want to say. And a lot of people have been asking me over time, Completionist, how do you find these books early? Well, I usually would chalk it up to be, my stores don't care. But recently I've come to notice a pattern, and I'll share this real quick with you. You need to be following me on my X account, aka, Twitter, because people will post on there when a new book title will drop, 2 books out from the one that's supposed to come out the soonest, right? So for The Last Sleepover, 2 books out will be book 7. Book 7's title dropped literally a day before today. So I decided to immediately check Barnes & Noble a day after to see if they had, and sure enough, they had a copy. This has been the going trend for about 4 years. So if you're looking for a little cheat hack to get these Goosebumps in early for your collection, and you don't want to wait for your Amazon order, or you don't want to wait to maybe risk spending the gas to drive an hour or however close your nearest bookstore is, know that hack and get to know bookstores, right? Get to know if they actually get the books in early or not. That can help you in the long run, okay? PSA aside, let's talk about The Last Sleepover. So this book, I'm going to be upfront. Ever since I've been back into collecting Goosebumps in my adult life, I haven't really been excited for a new release until this book. Maybe Fright Night to a degree, because the premise of Fright Night sounded right up my alley. The same thing with this. But this one, I think, more so had me on the edge of my seat, because when I read the synopsis and I heard the premise and I saw this beautiful cover art by Robert Ball, I was like, man, I hope that this book is a home run. While it isn't a home run, this easily is the best Goosebumps book to come out in the past 4 years. And what I mean by that is from Night of the Squawker through Fright Night, all the way through the first 5 House of Shivers books. In that 7-book run, this is the best book to come out in the past 7 books, or 4 years. And I was shocked. I was shocked, to put it bluntly, by how much I appreciated this book. And it's been a trend, right, in this series specifically, where Stein has been experimenting around, especially with like POV changes and doing some more dynamicism and trying more throwback type of ideas. This, to me, is what modern Goosebumps should be. And as I'll say near the end of the review as well, this feels in spirit like an original 62 and Series 2000 book, just modernized with modern technology in the mix. This is a book involving, as you can see on the cover, some ghosts. If you read the back blurb, it involves a smart house, which is something that Goosebumps has never really tried before. And while that sounds cool, I'm going to be upfront, that's not really what you're going to get out of this. Your mind might go immediately to something like Don't Scream. Or if you're a fan of Spine Tinglers, you might go to Killer Computer, where we're going to get a poltergeist becoming an electropath and using a smart house to terrorize a family. That's not what you get here. That's not what you get here. This book, I think, real talk. I love R.L. Stine, but the guy is probably the least serious author on the planet. And it frustrates me sometimes when he doesn't put in effort, but also warms my heart to know that he really just does this for fun. This book is a happy accident, because there's like so many past Goosebumps books just Frankenstein together to make this story. And while, as we'll see in the review, I do have some problems with it in regards to that point, this was a little happy accident. It was a very entertaining read, had a lot of fun moments. And I think that this is going to be a fan favorite of the House of Shivers series. I think that this is like one of your first Goosebumps books ever. Let's say you're just getting into the series now and you're finding my video. This, I can understand, is a very high one for you, or might be your favorite. I can totally see people, after reading this, once this comes out to the masses, start saying that this is one of the best moderns of all time. I can totally see that. But like I said, I'm going to keep it real, keep it honest with myself like I always do on these reviews. I have my own problems with it. So, do yourself a favor. Go pick this up as soon as you can. I know I'm putting this review out early, and I should mention this, my reviews work best if you have read the book and then you come watch my review. That way you can hear my thoughts and my analysis and would register better. If you want to avoid spoilers, I will put a time tag in the video of the part of the video to skip. So that way you can relatively stay spoiler free. And occasionally, if there is a mild spoiler dropped in the review near the end, I will definitely bring it up to you. Okay? So with that being said, click off now and come back if you would choose to do so. If you're crazy and you don't care and you want just to hear me talk about the book, stay on because we have a lot to unpack. We have an entire book to go over. This book is 147 pages, but for, I guess, the font size in the House of Shivers series, it would probably equate to maybe 130-ish, 120-ish pages in the former style. So this is a quote-unquote denser Goosebumps book when you think about it. So, that being said, let's talk about The Last Sleepover. So this book actually begins on a prologue. The prologue involves a character named Emily. And it's not Emily, like E-M-I-L-Y. It is Emma Lee. Because I guess Stein wanted to be creative. I also think that that probably was a nod at the character Emmy from Don't Scream when you think about it. But, you know, tangent aside. So we meet in first person this character named Emily. And she's going over this backstory of hers. Very vaguely, though, sadly. And she's telling a story basically of how she ended up dying and becoming a ghost. She had this sleepover at her house, and she ended up in a cold room, I guess a closet. And when she realized what has happened to her, and she feels trapped inside of the walls of the house, and knows that all these people at her sleepover have left, she is trying desperately to come out. But because nobody was ever able to find her, her family upped and moved away, and she was left in her house for like the past 10 years. And since then, she's kind of warmed up on being alone. She's cold at heart. She doesn't want people to grow close to her to make her feel warm again. But that changes when this family tries to move into her house. And she's telling the audience that she doesn't want these kids to move in, or these adults. And she's going to try everything in her power to get them to leave. Because she already finds them annoying. They've been painting the house, refurbishing everything, taking down the old decorations, the old carpet, her possessions that were once there that she kind of admired were gone. And now she's grown angry. And she wants to get her house back because it's the only thing she really has anymore. So once we find out that information, we cut to, I guess, quote unquote, the main characters of the story. Now, I should say this. Emma Lee was in first person. For the rest of the characters in the story, when we're not using Emma Lee's focus as the character, the rest of the book is in third person. And there's actually two main characters, 13-year-old Lily and 15-year-old Rory. Yes, the ages are pretty aged up from your average Goosebumps book, making Rory in particular, I think, the oldest Goosebumps protagonist in the history of the series, at least in the books. So that's something very new that you're going to be thrown into. Well, Lily and Rory, they're a pair of siblings. Rory, as you find out in the story, he's a part of this ghost hunting club at his high school. And, he's a freshman and he's kind of weird and he has weird friends and stuff like that. And Lily, she's 13 and she's an 8th grader at the local middle school. But as you learn later, the middle school was flooded due to a hurricane where they live. They never mentioned the name of the town or anything in specifics, but all that's mentioned is that a hurricane flooded the middle school, so the middle schoolers have to go to school at the high school. So whenever you get school shots in the book here, Lily's able to interact with Rory and Rory's friends and interact with older high school kids in her, I guess, town, which is very unique for this book as well. But anywho, we find out that Lily and Rory are moving from a house 4 blocks away into this home that is rumored to be haunted. And off the bat, Lily and her friend Megan are having a little hangout sesh in the new house that Lily lives in. And as they're talking, and as Megan is oohing and gahing over the new paint smells and how brand new and updated all the appliances in the houses are, because Rory, who, while he's a ghost hunter in his spare time, he's also a big video game nerd, specifically retro video games, and he's into like arcades and stuff. But he's also into modern tech, and he took this, I guess, smart house feature, which runs on this like universal, like, I guess, heartbeat of the house, and he programmed it to operate parts of the house, like the door locks, the lights, to roll down the windows, stuff like that. And in real life, we would call that AI technology Alexa, right? But in this book, Stein decided to call it Alyssa. So Alyssa is how, the house responds, and if it's within the command of the technology, it can do what you ask it to do. So anyways, Megan is kind of taken aback by how updated the house is, and she mentions slyly to Lily and Rory about this legend of this girl who died 10 years ago named Emily in the house. And they're like, we never heard of a legend like that, or a ghost haunting this house. And mind you, Rory is supposed to be in this ghost hunting club, and they've lived in this town all their life. So obviously 10 years ago, you mean to tell me they didn't hear about a girl that went missing inside of this house and this family tragedy that supposedly only happened 4 blocks away? That's ridiculous. But anyway, Megan goes into this very detailed story about the urban legend of Emily. And through Megan's storytelling, we get dropped in third person the backstory of Emily in that night and going back to the prologue to kind of expand the event. So we learn that Emily was having a sleepover to try to, I guess, lull these 3 mean girls at school who were bullying her to, I guess, get on her side and possibly find some things about them to maybe bond with or maybe use against them. It's kind of ambiguous on that, but that is basically the reason why she's having a sleepover. And we see that these girls have been hazing Emily at school, doing some awful things to her. And when they show up to Emily's house for this sleepover, all 3 of them just constantly gang up on her. And whenever Emily tries to suggest a game to play, they act bored. They say, oh, why don't we play some kittier game like Hungry Hungry Hippos or stuff like that? And they laugh, right? And then there's a scene where I guess they're talking about like, giving each other's makeovers. And the girl's like, well, come here, Emily. Let me put on some makeup for you. And while I'm at it, can I cut off your bangs? And Emily's like, no. And she gets all frustrated because the girls seem persistent and are bullying her and trying to peer pressure her to do it. So she runs off and goes to the bathroom, and she looks in the mirror and sees that they drew a mustache over her lip. And turns out, there was, I should mention this as well. I guess they did nod off for a little bit, or maybe she, fell asleep or wasn't paying attention. And it turns out maybe the girl, I guess, did cut her bangs. I forget the exact details. But this sets Emily off to go in and essentially try to strangle one of the girls. And it causes the other 2 to like pull her off. And they're trying to pull her out of the room or away from this other girl to cool her down. And they end up putting her inside of this closet and shutting the door. And from this point, the book, it basically says that, and it's very confusing. So, this is the spoiler part of the review, or I guess the overview here, that when she's in this closet, it's super cold. It's colder than any other room in the house by like 30 degrees. And she feels herself being sucked out of, I guess, the floor of the room into the darkness. And when she finally comes to, she realizes that the girls are gone. She's kind of stuck in the walls. And she hears her parents come home and they're looking for her desperately. And she's trying to scream for them to come save her and help her. The parents can hear her voice, but they can't see her. So she figures that she didn't die, but she's technically dead, stuck in this ghost world or this ghost realm where nobody can see her, nobody will ever be able to hold her again, stuff like that. So she cuts into, later on that her parents kept looking for her and gave up and then ended up selling the house and moving away. And Emily was left behind. And over time, I guess in the past 10 years, is said to haunt the house. But we already know that Emily likes being alone. So we're trying to piece together why that is, right? So once Megan's done with the story in the urban legend about Emily, Lily and Rory have polarizing reactions to it. Like Lily's like, oh, I don't think that's real at all. And Rory's like, well, I think it's real. And from this point on, Rory, because, this is a shifting POV, Rory decides to get his ghost hunting club at his high school involved to try to actually find Emily because he thinks that this could be real. There's some tangibility to it. So at high school, Rory's talking with his friends, and Lily's talking with her friend Megan and this other girl named Veronica, who actually lives across, or used to live across the street from her. And Lily's like, my brother's like buying into this legend. I don't believe in it, but I'm gonna let him do his thing. And we find out that Megan wants to have a slumber party at her house later on. But as we find out later on, it ends up getting switched over to Lily's house, which you can imagine probably plays a role in dealing with Emily, right? So Rory gets his friends together and he decides to have them meet with this ghost hunting equipment that one of the kids' dads bought off this guy named Morgan Strange. He's a character in this book, I'll say that. But he doesn't come in until later. They bring this ghost hunting equipment to Rory's house, and Lily goes off to bed with her parents, and now we shift over to Rory's perspective, where he's hunting down in the basement with his friends in the complete dark with these, electromagnetic frequency meters and, I guess, motion capture sensors to see if there's a ghost down there with them. And after a few annoying fake outs, eventually the kids get ambushed by this icy cold touch to the back of their neck, right? And this icy cold touch is causing them immense pain. Now I should rewind a little bit. I haven't gone over a few other things that has gone on supernaturally so far, and I totally forgot to mention them. But they're early on, once Megan is done with her story, there's this whole thing where they hear a voice inside of the kitchen after the legend was told, and Megan ends up trying to go help this malfunction going on near a window, and the window closes down on her head. And it gets her braid stuck, and they have to cut out her braid and like mess up her hairdo, which really messes with Megan, and she gets mad at Lily. And Lily has to come apologize after she sees that Megan had to get a new haircut after the ordeal, right? So there's that. And then there's also, as we'll see a little bit before this instance happened with the icy cold touch on the neck, there's an off-screen thing that involves a chapter of us reading a letter that I guess the ghost form of Emily has written to her parents about her plans to, or I guess it might be her diary or something, I don't know, about her plans. And she's gone over about the window thing, how she tried to sabotage it. And there's this other plan about something that happened completely off screen that ended with a chapter fake out, and we never got to find out why, and involved apparently her turning on a stove and trying to catch the kitchen on fire, right? So know that she's been trying to sabotage him, and now she's, I guess, resorting to physical violence herself. So these kids down in the basement get this icy cold touch. Rory's friends leave, and Rory's panicked and screaming, and he gets the attention of his sister and his parents when he runs back upstairs. And for a few chapters, he's literally going through the whole motions of, you gotta believe me. He's like, look, I'm telling you, my neck is cold, feel it. And they're like, yeah, it is cold. And Lily's like, I think you're faking. I think you're trying to pass this off like a hoax. I can't tell if you're telling the truth. He goes, no, man, I want to make this up. The ghost is real. And they're like, okay, where's the evidence? And Rory's like, well, my friend, we were in the moment. We forgot to record. The electromagnetic frequency thing wasn't working properly. None of the equipment was working. It was all faulty equipment, essentially. So Rory's like, okay, well, I'm in a rock and a hard place, or in between one, I should say. I can't win here, so I'm gonna have to find another way to get them to believe me. Well, Lily, she's trying to find reason to, I guess, disprove her brother is kind of making this up, and there's this whole scene where she's biting into a sandwich at school, and there's a dead mouse because there was a small scene down in the basement where they found dead mice, or I guess I think one of the rooms of the house, and there was a dead mice in her sandwich, and it's really gross where Lily bites into one and causes this whole scene at the lunchroom. Like the cleaning crew got to get involved. She thought that he planted that there to blame it on Emily, right? And she's trying to figure out why her brother's going through all this trouble to do so. And then one night, everything changes once after that whole ordeal happened, when she has her own harrowing encounter with the icy cold touch of Emily. And there's a scene where Emily literally, I guess in her invisible form, grabs her by the throat and throws her down the stairs. And once Lily gets up to try to come back up the stairs and keep trying to communicate with Emily, Emily's essentially telling her, I hate you guys. I hate your family. I want you out of here. I'm going to haunt you until your family leaves. And she makes the the stairs icy cold and slippery, so it's hard for her to come up, right? So she freaks out, and she immediately tries to find her brother to say, hey, look, I know your ghost hunting club left you. None of them want any more to do with this. And there's actually some corroboration where she's talking to some of these high schoolers who are friends with Rory to get, confirmation like, yeah, we had a weird instance happen in the basement, right? So this starts to click in Lily's head that they're telling the truth. Rory was actually telling the truth, and she needs Rory to wake up and help her, try to get Emily now because she's active. She goes and wakes up Rory and says, look, I'm starting to believe you. Emily attacked me. So Rory investigates and realizes that there's no supernatural phenomenon left over, which means that she's able to cover her tracks, and she comes and goes. So obviously this is going to be out of their pay grade, out of the high school ghost hunting club's parameters. So they have to go to this guy who is, I guess, a famous ghost hunter in town, who's named Morgan Strange, who sold the faulty equipment. So they go to this guy, and they're like, I'm not trying to buy Girl Scout cookies at first, but then when they essentially propose to him, like, hey, we have a ghost in our house, and we know that you collect ghosts, because for some reason Morgan Strange loves to collect ghosts. And he's like, oh, okay, well, let me take you down to my spirit cave. So these kids go into a house of a grown adult that they don't know, and they go down to this guy's basement, go down into this cave, and he essentially tells them that he collects spirits down here, and he advises them not to go deep in the cave, just wait at, I guess, the mouth of it and let one of the spirits come up. And there's a whole fake out when Rory thinks that a ghost version of himself comes up, but it turns out it's just a shape-shifting ghost who the collector here, Morgan Strange, affectionately calls, I think his name is Tonio. He's a shapeshifter, and he likes to play kind of pranks on the living. He's going to use Tonio to come with him, along with this black box lament configuration from Hellraiser kind of thing, to go into their house to capture Emily's spirit. And the kids are like, okay, this is great. We just got to tell our parents that this is what's going on. So they essentially tell the parents what this guy's coming over to do without telling them exactly everything, because they didn't know that he's there to literally capture it, because that would just be a little too far, right? So the guy comes over and he's like, okay, we need to go to the place where the last main phenomenon happened. And let's just say Morgan Strange has a very cringy joke at his expense, and he's taken out of the story over a jump scare over some mice. But he leaves behind this black box that may or may not eventually play a role in the story, but spoiler alert, it really doesn't. And from this point, the book kind of speed runs to kind of finish itself up, where, in the aftermath of Morgan Strange and everything, there's no ghost activity for a little while, so Lily and Rory think that things might have calmed down. Maybe the ghost got scared off by Tonio. They don't know. And the girls have decided to convene at the high school. And like I said, Megan wants to move her slumber party for her birthday over to Lily's house. And Lily agrees. And Rory, since he's going to be at his friend's house, and I think the parents are going to be out for the night, it's just going to be the 4 girls there at the slumber party, which is basically a reenactment of the beginning of the book. And from there, we find out something of Emily and perhaps what that pertains into her character. We also see some things that she does with the house technology to try to sabotage the living girls stuck inside there. And there's some perils of the girls trying to reach out for help. And we see some consequences with that. And then once we get that information with Emily, though, it kind of turns on to a hunky-dory thing and a kumbaya ending for the character. And the story ends on a more lighthearted note than usual. And that's where I want to leave it. I don't want to go any further than what I have so far. So that in a nutshell is what you're going to expect out of the last sleepover here. So to be very brief, I had a lot of positives with this book. First and foremost, Lily and Rory are very simple, down-to-earth characters, but Stein really does write them in a relatable way. They feel like typical kids with, typical lives thrown into this out of the box, out of the ordinary situation. And the book, for the most part, sticks to a more realistic approach, which is very Series 2000 in nature, and I've really appreciated that. And that stems to the narration style of the characters. I loved that Stein wove both of these characters, who are, like I said, record holders for some of the oldest Goosebumps protagonists in Goosebumps, and allowed the reader to go from Lily and go to Rory pretty seamlessly in the book. It was very refreshing. And on top of that, we got a villain perspective for the first time since Night of the Living Mummy. But before that, basically, it was only ever done in Slappy's Nightmare. So if you like villain perspective stories, look no further than this. This was really cool with what Stein was able, I guess, to bring to the table with Emily, even though she does have her own fair share of negatives, sadly. Reading this book was a brisk breeze, because, the seamless transitions between characters was really nice. And there are some things done in third person I have never seen R.L. Stein do in a book, outside of maybe Fear Street. So this might be a first thing for Goosebumps when it comes to that. I really enjoyed the writing style of this book. While it doesn't have much atmosphere or prose going for it, it makes up for with its, weird melding of different books. If I had to be on a comparative lens with this is an amalgamation of a lot of things. It's like Smart House, Don't Scream, The Ghost Next Door, The Haunter. There's some other things I'm kind of blanking on. Oh, Why I'm Not Afraid of Ghosts from Ghost of Fear Street. This probably feels the closest to that than anything else. It's like if you put those into a blender and Frankenstein parts of those stories in different sections. Like the first act is one book. The second, or I guess the whole middle of the book, is The Haunter. The third act is, kind of pulling on some lazy things I've seen House of Shivers do with the third act, where, they do pretty much padding and filler to fill out page space. And then they're rushing through to finish the end with the final act. But it's like if you took a bunch of different ideas and sandwiched them together. And I really enjoyed the idea there when it came to that. When it comes to the villain Emily, when she was on page gratuitously and given something to do, she was pretty threatening. She was willing to slam a window down on a character's head. She was willing to try to set the house on fire. I didn't mention this in the plot review, but she actually tried to set the house on fire multiple times. I don't really feel like to go over everything when I go over things in the plot review, but that is there too when you go to read this book. And the whole scene with like the neck thing with the Ghost Club, or even the scene with Lily, which I think is the best scene in the whole book. And even some stuff in the final act when she's given some stuff to do, albeit a little bit tame given the stuff she was doing previously. It was very serviceable. I want to say Emily is like a top 10 Goosebumps villain, but she definitely had a threatening aura to her. And she definitely had a mission to mess this family up. While it's not utilized the best way, I feel, for this book and the topic at hand, it was very good when it was there. I would even say, getting down into the concept itself, not necessarily the execution, but the concept of a poltergeist in a smart house is really cool. And there are some things done very creatively here with that does offer some really fun scenes in the story. And there's even some contextual things to be had with the villain Emily near the end, where there's some symmetry going on with why she feels so cold, and as we learn answers about what this closet thing is very vaguely, and as we get to know some of these things, the heartbeat of it is that she is cold, she feels alone, she wants to be alone, but by the end, when you see what happens in the end, she learns to be open again. She learns to want to be warm again and want to be around people. So there's some evolution in the story, right? And I can go on with a bunch of smaller things, but to put it lightly, the best thing about this book is that there's really nothing hateable here. Everything is serviceable at the very least. So I commend that a lot. I really do. When it comes to negatives, though, there is one thing I think a lot of people are going to be thrown aback by, is the backstory of Emily. The 3 girls who bullied her in the backstory, they are awful characters. Not saying that's a negative to this, because they're literally in the flashback, right? They're only consequential to how Emily ended up the way she did. But I could totally see people hating them, taking away their enjoyment. And if you're in that kind of crowd, I get you to a degree. I did not like them myself. I wouldn't hold it against you if you deduct anything on it for that, but I'm not going to. But I will bring it up that it is kind of hard to stomach. It's borderlining the cattiness from stuff you would see in The Curse of Camp Cold Lake, for example, even though I think it's done way worse than that. So take that for what you will. But the first glaring thing I think I can say in a negative about this book is that I don't really feel like this book knew what it wanted to be. And that goes back to the Frankensteining of different books. I feel like it wants to be The Haunter, it wants to be Don't Scream, it wants to be Smart House, it wants to be, there's a character, Morgan Strange. He basically feels like the exterminator from the Awesome Ants episode. It wants to feel like that, but the book never commits to anything. There's portions of the book where it seems like it's going to be heading down a poltergeist possessing the smart house and trying to get revenge and scaring these people out of the house. It does it for maybe a quarter of the book, and then it shifts into The Haunter, where there's boring, just sitting around doing nothing, waiting around for ghost evidence to appear on radars. Why? Third act is them getting into the whole thing with Morgan Strange and seeing the spirit cave and being taken on that random adventure to nowhere. Mind you, there's a black box they get from that never gets used in the climax or the ending. So that, to tell you, that whole third act was completely pointless, but it's in there for some reason. And then the final act is the stuff, it comes back to what it was kind of trying to do in the first part, to poltergeist possessing the smart house technology. I don't get this book. If you just picked a lane, I feel like if it just stuck with that Emmy from Don't Scream or Zippy from Killer Computer vibe, this would have been fantastic. And there's a reason why those two books are very coveted when it comes to this, I guess, genre here, or technology horror. And that's because these villains are put at the focus. There's no mystery around them. They're not trying to figure out what they are, where they come from. They're trying to figure out how to stop them. And the violence and the stakes crescendo because they learn that it's really hard to stop them. They don't have that in this book for Emily's character. No. They have to go into the whole mystery of trying to find out who she is, what she is. Mind you, that stuff is super confusing. That's also another negative on its own right. Is she actually dead? Was she transported to the ghost world, ghost dimension? The book literally mentions, in a blink and you miss it reveal about the closet from the prologue and from the backstory that Megan shared about Emily. All it is a portal to a ghost realm, and they're said to be very rare. That's the explanation of how she ended up dead. We don't know this girl's age. We don't know if she's actually dead or if she's a real ghost. If she was a human that was taken to the ghost realm, can she come back to her human form? I think the ending even kind of muddies that up. And it, I guess if you are somebody that likes or thinks that less is more and you can use your mind to fill in the blanks, even then, I think what happens in the ending with the whole, I guess, feeling warm again and getting hard and developing, I don't know, a physical form means that she's coming alive again. That makes no sense. Like, how is this stuff happening? Plot convenience in motion. A lot of things in terms of logic is mulled over with that, and that could be frustrating. Going back to the beginning of the story, the whole setup about the family moving 4 blocks away and never hearing about Emily's death or disappearance is bogus to me. I just can't buy into that, especially when Rory claims to be in a ghost hunting club and he doesn't know a famous ghost story in town. Megan knows it. This girl Veronica knows about it. They've seen this ghost apparently. Even though Megan at some point says, I told you the story, but I don't believe it, which is another weird thing. Very inconsistent. But you know what I'm saying? Like, there's not tangible disbelief to be had there. Like, you mean to tell me that the family just are the only family in town that did not hear about this girl going missing? I mean, we don't know how long the family has lived there, but it's definitely implied they've lived there their whole lives. So, just makes no sense. Because at the time, Emily would have disappeared, Rory would have been 5 years old, and Lily would have been 4 years old. It makes no sense. But I digress. And, going into this, I just feel like there's not enough Emily in this book. I think that's my last big negative with it. This did not have the Emmy or Zippy factor that I wanted out of it. And maybe, like I said, that was my expectations being set too high for something like this. But this just ended up kind of apexing on some of the weaker aspects of why I'm not afraid of ghosts. But it just had that like Della from Curse of Camp Cold Lake factor with like a ghostly entity for a villain. And I just feel like it's a mixed bag when it comes to that. Like, the stuff we did get with Emily is good. We just didn't get enough. And this should have been a book where the villain's put on the main focus. And we should have gotten more POV changes to Emily and her plans and her scheming, trying to get at this family. All we got was a prologue, a random diary entry or something, and then maybe some context she'll drop in like a bit of conversation with the characters. It just wasn't enough to kind of make this idea be glued together perfectly, right? So this brings me to my final thoughts in this very long review. But all in all, if I had to rate The Last Sleepover from a 0 to 5 star basis, despite my problems, shockingly, I'm willing to give this thing at least a 4.5 or higher. I think that this book is exceptional. There's a lot of great things going about it. It's an easy read. It's definitely revisitable. I think this is going to be a fan favorite modern, like I said earlier, for a lot of you out there. But for me personally, I cannot give it a 5 out of 5. So I knew it wasn't going to get that. With the problems, I decided to be a little bit harsher and actually a little bit fairer, given that the positives do kind of outweigh some of these negatives in some aspects. And I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars, which is an A-. It's a great book, but barely great. You know, it's just enough to put it in that top level, top echelon of Goosebumps for me. So yeah, that's my thoughts on The Last Sleepover. Let me know down in the comment section when you finally get to read this book, or if you have read it, what did you think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.